this is a good place to start to talk about these different activities, and after we had our general framework of active to passive, woodland to wetland, so what's next? How do you design this island so we can make a schedule and a budget and a plan for the park district so they can move forward with this? And what we did, as architects, it was a bit of a native challenge to us. We had this 91-acre site, a mile long, and we all, started designing and started drawing trees and paths, only to realize, you just planted hundreds of trees, and who's going to take care of these trees and who's going to pay for these trees? And so it was a bit of a lesson in scale that we had to go back and learn. And so what we did to get a better grasp of the scale, the just huge scale of the island, was we overlaid this grid of hexagons over the whole island. And the point of each hexagon was a quarter acre, and the purpose of that is we can grasp that. We know what a quarter acre pocket park feels like. Here's a quarter acre drawn over the bean. We've been in that space. We know what that would feel like. And then we knew there were some areas where we wanted continuous multiple acres of habitat. We worked with an ecologist on the team who said, if you're going to have a good bird habitat or a good habitat for critters, there's coyotes out on the island, you need at least 4 or 5 acres. So we knew there were some areas that we didn't want to have campgrounds right next to forests, because those wouldn't be productive spaces for the animals or the people. And so we wanted a continuous block of this habitat or lawn for kite flying, for example. So we did this activity, which was really helpful, because then each acre or quarter acre, we knew, if it's a woodland, it's full of trees. If it's a savanna, it has this many trees in it. If it's a pond, how much water is that? And we can start to get a scale sense of that. And we kind of related it in our minds to a honeycomb, the way bees make the honeycomb infrastructure, and then they fill it in with either a place for nesting or a place for hibernating, a place for the honey to go, and they use these cells and during their lifespan kind of change them out. And so we did the same thing with our different habitats that we knew we wanted: the forest or woodland, savanna, prairie, wetland, all the way to the reef, the open water. And so this is our plan, and as you can see, the dark is the woodland, and you can start seeing the wetland. I guess I have a pointer. This is our perched wetland. The woodland is starting to show up in the east to block people's views of McCormick Place and to capture the birds before they smack into it. 12th Street Beach was our shoreline, and that's existing today, and we wanted to just amplify that amenity. So we presented this to the mayor's open space task force, and they got it. They were willing to go along with us. They recommended we don't show this to the public as our final plan, but we kept moving forward after this step. And in much the same way that was an overlay, we also wanted to use the same concept, this kind of fractal changing in scale when we were looking at the topography. This was an early sketch of the topography where you have the woodland hill, up on the hill, the upland, and some more hill features there separated by a great lawn in the center, and our wetland starting to come out here. So that was, we felt like if the structure of the island was built up, we were very aware that this is man-made, so should we make it look natural? Why do we have to? It's not natural, it's man-made. We wanted to use some of the concepts that we learned of how the shoreline works and how topography is naturally formed in this area, and bring this next layer to make as much perimeter of habitat as we could. We felt like if we fractalized it, we were just increasing exponentially the perimeter and the area of different habitats, and changing the views and making it interesting for people and animals. So this was the final plan after it's shown in the summertime, I guess. And we again have the path circulating, uniting your experience from the reefs all the way to the woodland, and so this is the framework plan. And now I'm going to zoom into some different areas. We kind of, as we were developing it, thought of it as the urban area in the north, connected by Solidarity Drive, and the southern area, which is more remote and isolated. There's no bridge, no buildings, and then the reef, which is offshore. So zooming in here, as we were working with the Park District on this framework plan, it was really important to incorporate a music venue. They had operated Charter One Pavilion for a number of years, and it was, seemed like it was working. People liked the shows. There's a great view of the skyline, and it was the revenue that was generated from that, they identified as using to maintain the rest of the island. We're proposing a lot of different activities and habitat and maintenance from the beginning was a big question, a big concern to be part of the whole island. So it was sustaining itself. And so this is the music venue shown here. Again, it has sort of that hexagonal form. And we were really looking at another urban aspect, which is the Harborwalk. So right now, there are all these boats parked in the harbor, and the Harborwalk is, a way. What's missing out there is just more amenities to keep people there longer, to have boat schools, to have Park District run training and different amenities. So people go visit all the museums and then come here. Different places where you could rent a kayak or rent some binoculars. So that's kind of working off of what they have in the audience that already goes to Northerly Island and likes hiking and bird watching and being at the beach, but really giving them the amenities they need to improve that experience. So this is a rendering of the music venue that we designed, and the idea was to really elevate what's there now and incorporate it more into the landscape. The Charter One Pavilion, which now I think it's called First Merit Pavilion, it's a temporary structure, which in some sense, it's temporary because by law it has to be, but it sits there all year, and it's this big scaffolding you see right when you walk in, and we just felt like that, that's sending the wrong message, that you don't feel like you're in a nature park, you feel like, you're at a great show, but it was sending the wrong message. So we wanted to design this venue to hold about 8,000 people and to be open to the public year-round. It could be a ice skating pavilion in the winter. It could. The idea was that maybe we work with the planetarium and have some different stargazing structures out there. Kind of Stonehenge style, so you can be out there. They could run programs, and you can start to reorient yourself in a city using the stars and different methods. And this is on the bottom, a rendering of the Harborwalk. So, getting people right to the edge, even though it's not green and soft and planted, it's bringing people down to the edge and making a productive harbor, and using that activity and really amplifying it was the goal. This is a rendering of the middle of the island. This is where the Great Lawn is, where you kind of transition from that north urban area to the south. You see the woods drawing you to hike further south. And the pavilion that we're showing was a proposal for what to do with the terminal building. This was a big topic of conversation working with the Park District, who at the time of this framework plan, Mayor Daley was still in office, and he had closed down the airport, and it seemed like the Park District was eager to, to send a stronger message, why is there a terminal building here if there's no airport, and kind of clarify that. And to us, the biggest issue was not about the history. It's a really great building, but the issue is that you have a glass pavilion on a migratory bird pathway, and the terminal building right now is used by the Park District as a field house, and they have some different lectures and activities happening there. And in the photo, you can see that they have this film on the outside layer of the glass, so it's less transparent, because bird strike was such a big issue, which is great that they're addressing it, but the building isn't at all living up to how beautiful it had been designed to be. So we proposed either, looking at some different options for Ornolux glass that has embedded in it a UV filter that's invisible to humans but visible to birds, or maybe we open up the central hall so we get rid of all that glass and invite the public into that concrete structure, or looking at it as an open pavilion. So that was really sparked a lot of conversation when we presented this. But it's something that I think really has to be addressed. You can't just slap these films on a building and you can't, but something has to be done. So this is another rendering toward the middle of the island when Mayor Rahm Emanuel has now joined office, and he's really excited about Northerly Island, especially as a place for urban camping. And so this was a big part of the plan from the beginning where, you know, you're on an island, so there's not too many places to run off to, so it's a great opportunity for kids to go camping in the city, and it's a pretty wild experience to see the skyline behind you while you're in a prairie and feel like you're a million miles away, but know that you're right in your own backyard. So now moving to the reef, the shape of the reef is really interesting to me. What I think is so interesting about it is that it's looking at the elevation or the bathymetry underwater, and where we've built up these barrier islands is where the water is the shallowest. The reason the reef is so large is that this is a really deep pit where sand was dredged to build the island initially, so we had these historic maps that started to point that out, and there's also a big diving community in Chicago that took some film for us that was really cool to see. There's a lot more life down there than I had any idea of. So that, rather than saying, well, it's man-made, we can just spell it out as Chicago, we were trying to have the public see that, you know, that we can amplify some of the things that are there, but just not visible, or that we've forgotten about being in the city. So this is an image of the reef. So we were trying to look for all these opportunities where fish and birds and people could be together. The Park District wasn't interested or able to really operate a animal sanctuary, and so that, you know, that wasn't the goal, but at the same time we wanted to make sure that as we were bringing people and wildlife together, that it was good habitat for everyone. So here's the southern tip of the island, and this is where in the framework plan we've proposed a perched wetland. So this would be a wetland that's disconnected from the fluctuations of the water rise and fall. It would be fed by rainwater that's captured on McCormick Place. So even though we've turned our back to it, we still want the rainwater that's captured on the roof of that building. Currently they do capture rainwater, and it goes into an underground tunnel that bubbles up on the island. If you go out to Northerly, I guess it's closed right now for construction, but you can see this kind of bathtub thing bubbling up of all the rainwater that is pumped out there. So it's this great infrastructure they already have going, so we thought we could tap into that. And you know, we were thinking the reason the wetland was perched was that if you have one area where water is more or less constant, and then you can turn your head and see the levels of the lake naturally rising and falling, it would help people understand and that, you know, what's natural, what's artificial, where are they, and then have a productive habitat throughout, more constant. We were talking about the fish habitat in the nursery, and part of the proposal included salvaging ships. There's actually a big program in the Great Lakes to find old ships or school buses, I've heard, and submerge them to be this really, really great fish habitat. And you know, it could be an interesting thing for this Chicago scuba diving team to explore, and just, you know, everything above water and below, we were trying to enrich that experience.